Hanging. Hanging is one of the oldest and most widely used execution methods. There are two main types, short drop and long drop. The short drop often led to slow strangulation. The long drop, developed in the 19th century, was designed to break the neck instantly. Long drop hanging is still practiced as the method of execution in a few countries, including Japan and Singapore. Firing squad. A firing squad involves several shooters aiming at the prisoner's heart. Traditionally, one shooter has a blank round so no one knows who fired the fatal shot. The shooters are not told beforehand whether they are using live or blank ammunition. This is believed to reinforce the sense of diffusion of responsibility. It provides each member with a measure of plausible deniability that they personally did not fire a bullet at all. In practice, however, firing a live round produces significant recoil, while firing a blank round does not. The United States has used it sparingly. The last known case was in South Carolina in 2024. Electric chair. The electric chair was invented in the 1880s as a modern alternative to hanging. The electric chair sends high-voltage electricity through the body. The goal is to stop the heart and destroy the brain quickly. In practice, it hasn't always worked cleanly. Multiple shocks are sometimes needed. It's still legal in a few U.S. states, but rarely used. Gas chamber. The gas chamber was introduced in the United States in the 1920s. This method uses hydrogen cyanide gas in a sealed chamber. The prisoner breathes it in and usually dies within minutes. But the process is unpredictable and often painful, with reports of gasping and convulsions. It's been almost entirely phased out due to these issues. Lethal injection. Lethal injection is currently the most common method in the United States. Typically, 3 drugs are used in lethal injection. Pancuronium bromide is used to cause muscle paralysis and decreased neural transmission to the lungs, potassium chloride to stop the heart, and midazolam for sedation. In theory, it's the most humane method, but in practice, it's faced legal and ethical problems, especially with botched doses, drug shortages, and debates over cruelty. Beheading. Beheading has a long history, from swords to guillotines. In medieval Europe, it was seen as an honorable death, fast and final. In some European countries, beheading was reserved only for the upper class, a way to die with dignity compared to commoners. It was less humiliating than hanging, burning, or other methods. The French guillotine was introduced in the 1700s as a humane alternative. It remained in use in France until 1977. Today, beheading is still used in some countries by sword, usually in public. Crucifixion. Crucifixion is most commonly associated with Jesus Christ, but it was a common form of capital punishment in the ancient world, especially under the Roman Empire. Crucifixion was designed to be slow, humiliating, and public. The person was nailed or tied to a cross and left to die, often over days. It was used mostly for slaves, rebels, and enemies of the state, not Roman citizens unless they were stripped of citizenship for treason. Stoning. Stoning is a method of capital punishment where the person is buried or tied down, and a crowd throws stones at them until they die from blunt trauma. It has been used as a form of punishment for grave misdeeds since ancient times. Stoning is still practiced in some places under certain interpretations of Islamic law. It's slow, chaotic, and deeply controversial. Human rights groups have widely condemned its use. Burning at the stake. Burning as an execution method has been used historically for crimes like heresy or witchcraft. Victims were tied to a post and set on fire, usually in public. It was meant to send a message and terrify others. Burning alive is now considered one of the most inhumane forms of execution ever devised. Garrote. A garrote is a tool used for execution, made from rope, wire, or something similar, used to strangle someone. It was used in Spain until the 1970s. The method was quick but violent, and it's no longer used today. Impalement. Impalement is one of the most horrifying execution methods in history. Used by rulers like Vlad the Impaler, victims were forced onto a sharp stake and left to die over hours or even days. It was intended purely to cause pain and terror. Drowning. Drowning was a method of execution used very early in history for a large variety of cultures. In some cultures, there were taboos against shedding the blood of royals, and so when the execution of a king or members of the royal family was thought necessary, they were drowned to avoid spilling of royal blood. Animals. Execution by animals includes being fed to lions, trampled by elephants, or torn apart by dogs. It was used in ancient Rome, parts of Asia, and even colonial empires. It was both a punishment and public spectacle. Drawing and quartering. This method was used in medieval England for men convicted of high treason and was one of the most brutal execution methods in history. The condemned was hanged until near death, then disemboweled, castrated, beheaded, and finally chopped into 4 parts. It was intended to send a strong political message. The last recorded sentence of drawing and quartering in the UK was in the early 1800s, though often commuted. Boiling alive. This method involved placing the person in boiling water or oil, causing death through extreme burns and shock. It was used in parts of Europe and Asia, often for poisoners. King Henry VIII authorized its use in England in the 1500s. It was banned soon after due to its excessive cruelty. Flaying, also known as skinning alive, flaying was used in ancient Persia, Assyria, and some Asian empires. The victim's skin was removed while they were still alive, usually in public as a warning. It was not a common punishment, but when used, it was intended to demonstrate total domination. Scaphism. Scaphism involved trapping a person between 2 boats, force-feeding them milk and honey, and leaving them in a swamp to die from exposure, insects, and infection. It was slow, gruesome, and symbolic, reserved for extreme crimes against the state. Forced suicide. In ancient Greece and Rome, certain high-status individuals were given the choice of taking their own lives rather than facing public execution. This was considered more honorable. The philosopher Socrates was sentenced to drink poison hemlock in 399 BCE, one of the most famous examples. Bludgeoning. While similar to stoning, some cultures used direct blunt force, like clubs or hammers, to carry out executions. This was used for certain crimes or in mob justice, and while it wasn't always formalized, it functioned as capital punishment in practice. Modern alternatives. In recent years, some governments have looked into alternatives like nitrogen hypoxia, which involves using pure nitrogen gas to cause unconsciousness before death. It's still being tested both legally and ethically. Debates over the death penalty continue, with many countries abolishing it entirely. As of now, over 70% of countries worldwide no longer carry out executions.